For the last Sunday in April, you've found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, Jerry Baxter, the judge in Fulton County, is going to resentence some of those Atlanta educators. School reform is signed by Governor Nathan Deal, and the FBI confirms that ISIS sympathizers are being investigated in Atlanta. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
We are glad you could be with us this fine Sunday. We're going to begin where we've been for 7 months, which is the cheating trial for Atlanta educators. We kicked this around a lot over the months, and especially last week when the sentences were handed down. And now Judge Jerry Baxter is going to revisit the sentences. And Alexis, I turn to you. It looks as the only reason I can think he would do this is if he's going to reduce those 7-year sentences for the 3 top educators that were convicted.
It sounds like it, and he certainly should reconsider, because it just is an outrageous penalty that he's forcing these educators to pay. Especially, I'll point out that Jon Stewart did a piece comparing the Atlanta school teachers' sentencing trial, the whole case, to the Wall Street cheaters case during the great debacle that happened there, where none of them ever admitted guilt, and they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of fine and never did any jail time. So I think that it really speaks to the best interest of the community and the taxpayers, really. Why would you confine these teachers to prison? And and they're also going to appeal their sentence anyway.
Well,
so.
I think Judge Baxter, Jeff, you can chime in here. I think Judge Baxter was frustrated when he handed down those sentences because nobody would take the deal, or not enough of them took the deal.
Well,
Yes,
but 20-year sentences with 7 to serve, and you weren't here last week, but I'm really opposed to that.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think that those sentences were excessive. You know, the folks who were, you know, Beverly Hall isn't there to you know, talk about her part in all of this. I think that we had some educators who were doing what they were told to do, directed to do, and thought that they were acting in the best interest of their school or their students. And to hand down 20-year sentences for that seems to me just way out of line with what the offense is.
I also think they were overcharged. The RICO charge, I think, was an outrageous overcharge.
Yeah, but the jury was unanimous on that. Now,
Yeah,
I find myself...
I kept reading everything about it, and I just never could understand.
That's kind of the crux of what the judge is going to go back onto. I happen to agree that the judge did the right thing. He doesn't have to change the sentencing, and I'm sure you read the same things I did. The question I think the judge has to fix is, are these people guilty of conspiring to violate the RICO law, or did they actually violate the RICO law? Now, he's going to go back and fix that.
Right.
Well, I think, but I have a hunch that 7-year sentences become 2-year sentences or something like that. Remember, these 3 were at the top of the food chain, so to speak. The others were just teachers.
And yet he would be going back on it, what I thought was a great message, that, you know, he wanted to send a signal nationally that cheating is not going to be tolerated, and that kids were betrayed, and that this was a criminal enterprise. The school system was turned into a criminal enterprise, and the jurors, the predominantly black jury, agreed with that.
Well, that's crazy to call it a criminal enterprise. It was not a criminal enterprise. They were doing the best they could as
organized
teachers.
Cheating parties. It was all organized.
And
You're denying they were getting bonuses. There was a profit motive.
Profit motive.
Yeah.
Okay, $500, right? So
it was a ripoff, and you laugh about it. You think it's funny.
I don't think it's funny.
It's not funny. I think it's terribly sad, but I also think it's just outrageous. It's an overcharge, an overreach, and I also think that the sad part about it is that some of those teachers and even the principals were good educators. They were doing their very best to teach some of these kids.
Well, they were morally flawed people. Some of these people were totally amoral.
You realize you're agreeing
How do
with
you know that? How do you know that? Do you know them personally?
You know what?
You're going to sit here and say that they're amoral, they're morally flawed?
I saw the tapes of the confessions, Jeff, and I asked you to see the same thing. They were crying, they were apologizing. Let me finish. Because they said that they were ashamed that they went along with it, that it was wrong, and they knew it was wrong, and they admitted, some of them did, that they were morally wrong.
Now I'm going to change the subject because this is an unusual situation in which we find ourselves. Phil is agreeing with Kasim Reed on the sentences for the educators.
I'm agreeing with the jurors.
And I'm agreeing with Andy
know?
Young. This is a very unusual situation in which we find ourselves. The city council in Atlanta, staying in the city, voted Monday on very short notice to approve a $13 million letter of credit to Tyler Perry to the U.S. Army for the purchase of land on which Tyler Perry proposes to build a movie studio. It's not a payoff to Perry. It's a technical thing that's required if you're going to buy surplus land from the Army, because it's got to be remediated, right? It's got environmental damage and all that. And there were some objections. Felicia Moore, who almost always votes against Kasim Reed, did again. I look at it as kind of a straightforward business transaction, getting something going at Fort McPherson. What do you think, Phil?
Well, I don't like the fact, and this happens a lot, Jeff and I have talked about this, I don't like the fact that it's the taxpayers are on the hook for this. You don't see this with some other productions that are going on around the area. So I know Tyler Perry it's a great enterprise. We all love Tyler Perry and what he's doing, but I always worry when the taxpayers may be on the hook.
Well, but I don't see any other way around it.
Yeah, I mean,
because what the city is doing, Jeff, is they're guaranteeing, if Tyler Perry doesn't make good on his payments to buy the rest of that land, then the city is at risk.
That's right.
But there's competition here.
There is competition. There's competition in Doraville at the GM site there. There's going to be apparently a huge space there for this kind of operation, and elsewhere around the metro area. You know, the good news is the growth that we've seen in the film industry in metropolitan Atlanta. It's terrific. And I think equally good news is if we can have a major piece of that right smack in the city of Atlanta. You know, a place where people can go and find jobs and opportunities, and there are tremendous jobs in this field, and they're good paying jobs. It's right there on the MARTA line, and I think that those are the kinds of things that the mayor is looking at when he sees this deal, and the city council.
Real quickly to touch on this, the city councilwoman, Keisha Lance Bottoms, I think that's one of the more interesting names in our public realm. Keisha Lance Bottoms, there I said the whole thing properly. She has been appointed to head the Atlanta Fulton County Recreation Authority. Strangely to me, she will keep her seat on the Atlanta City Council, but they're supposed to have jobs, they're part-timers. And John Eves of Fulton County is not happy because she will be in charge, Alexis, of what I presume we're headed toward, which is Georgia State University's plans to take over Turner Field and put a mixed-use development there and student housing. What do you think?
Well, that's certainly what it looks like, that that plan is getting some traction, that Georgia State will be the one to take over the Turner Field once the Braves leave to go to Cobb County and become the Cobb Braves. But I don't see any, you know, as long as everything is above board and there's transparency in the activities, I think it's okay.
Isn't it an invitation, though? I mean, a potential conflict of interest? I was surprised that this was allowed.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to me that in the past, when people get city appointments, they leave their council post because they become city employees. But this is a hybrid. This is Atlanta Fulton County.
It is, and it's an authority.
And that's
so
why,
it's
that's why I
independent. That's exactly right. That's why she can, because it is an authority, it is independent. She has said that she will recuse herself from any votes that come before city council. In her capacity there, she's clearly qualified. She's an attorney. She's got a lot of experience. She knows the ins and outs. And, you know, I think that a lot of people are upset because the mayor's using some political muscle, but the mayor's got it to use. You know, and in terms of control, if I'm not mistaken, the city already controls the board.
That's correct. They do. They have a vast
and it's the
majority.
board that is the decision-making authority there.
All right. I was going to talk about the sale of the Atlanta Hawks, but we're out of time in this segment. I think we can say that it was almost $1 billion franchise. A fellow named Anthony Ressler, the Duke All-American Grant Hill, and Sarah Blakely of Spanx are going to be the ownership group buying the Hawks. The presumption is they'll stay here in Atlanta because they're buying the arena too. So why would you leave if you own the arena? When we come back, guess what? DeKalb County, the gift that keeps on giving. Stay with us.
Have a question? question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
And before we jump into the DeKalb County cesspool, I think we should note, because I think it's this important, that Mayor Eva Galambos of Sandy Springs died a week ago today. She was 87 years old. She was a true pioneer, a trailblazer. Phil, you live in Sandy Springs. You have the benefit of those terrific city services that are being delivered at a far cheaper cost than Fulton County ever could if they bothered to deliver the services.
Well, that's right. I just want to take a minute to salute her, and I think we would all agree that she was a great mayor. She was a great activist, which we all appreciate.
Started a revolution.
She fought for decades to get the city of Sandy Springs, and finally she got it. It was a popular referendum. 94% of the people wanted it. She was elected mayor soon after that in 2005. Now, she was an economist. She was a great apostle of private enterprise, and as you know, it's a national model. It's been written up in the New York Times and been featured on all the TV networks where it's privatization. We save a lot of money in our city. We don't have the big government bureaucracy. All of our capital improvements are paid for, and there's no tax increase since we became a city. So God bless her.
None of the new cities have had tax increases. She started a revolution, and it was her persistence over 30 years. Just a little footnote. She used to run the Southern Regional Education Board. And when my wife came out of college all those years ago, her first job was working for Eva Galambos at the SREB.
And as a footnote, too, it's a real tribute to her. We have municipal people from all over the world coming to study the model of Sandy Springs. Other cities in Georgia are studying the privatization model.
All right, now let's turn to DeKalb County. Eva Galambos was a great lady.
She was a sweet lady. She really was, and she worked long and hard for that.
Right.
I mean, I remember at least 20 years working on that over at the legislature.
Right.
Her and Dorothy Felton, the late Dorothy Felton.
That's
were
right.
both
We
the
should mention
champions.
Dorothy Felton, you're right, who died before she could see that thing come together. All right, in DeKalb County, it just never seems to end. Now, the interim chief executive is in the gun sights of the press and presumably the FBI over some home repair work at his house in Lithonia. I don't know what to make of it. It's easy to say the FBI is looking at a case because you presume the FBI is looking at every case, right? But in this case, I think they are. Lee May, the interim CEO, who's being paid as a CEO, while the CEO, Burl Ellis, awaits his retrial, and he's also being paid and piling up pension credits. Now we find Lee May, it's a very strange case. The county sewage system backed up into his house. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Pretty much destroyed his first floor. And he made a phone call to a former county employee who said, oh, we can help you. And the next thing you know, the county is apparently paying for it. Is that how you read it, Phil?
Well, I think we all read the story in the Friday AJC, and it seems like that he got obviously special treatment. There's questions as to why did he get a huge $6,500 check for work that was $2,500. What happened to the rest of the money? I think he's got some explaining to do.
Well, and again, the guy who signed off on the check and expedited the service was Kelvin Walton, who's a unindicted but a key witness in the Burl Ellis trial.
And a known liar.
Well, yeah,
well,
that
I
too.
think and also at the time he was an employee of the county, and even you mentioned that he was a former employee, but he just only recently resigned from that position.
Yeah, and Lee May at the time was a commissioner. He wasn't the CEO, but you know, let's just things went badly for Lee May. Could DeKalb really be paying 3 CEOs at one time?
Oh my.
Well,
the
that
judicial
would be horrible. But just kind of think about what happened with Lee May and how he got special treatment. That's why people are upset with government at all levels. They don't like people being treated differently from themselves. I mean, you're supposed to be working for the taxpayers, and I think
but it happens, and it happens for obviously for the people who actually govern the county. It also happens for influential citizens because they can call one of those commissioners and say, I have a pothole in front of my house. Just imagine if there's a pothole in front of Dick Williams' house. It's going to get fixed right away.
Actually,
it's
actually not. No, it won't.
And so it just doesn't apply to commissioners.
I think think he would go through the proper channels, and that's all I'm saying. Go through the proper channels.
Yeah, and I think that we need to be able to do the same thing when we look at these allegations and others, and that is to go through the proper channels, and that's through those who are, authorized to investigate these things and get to the bottom of them. We're not to the bottom of this one yet. We know, in fact, that the county reimburses citizens when that kind of thing occurs, and rightfully so. It should, because it's the county's fault.
And in Lee May's defense, there wasn't a real county policy in place at that time. Now there is, by the way.
Right.
But I don't know.
Well, that didn't seem clear, because in the AJC story of last Friday, they compared it with another homeowner who had a similar problem, and he was told he had to go through these channels, and it took a lot longer.
Well, we'll see where they go with this. I hope it's nowhere, frankly, because I don't think the county can stand more turmoil in its leadership. Let's turn to state news. Governor Deal made a lot of pomp and circumstance this week, signing his Opportunity School Districts bill, which is drawing pretty much wide praise from everything I can see. And
there'll be a referendum on that next year.
Yeah, it goes to the voters.
As it goes to
It goes to the voters. The teachers union will oppose it. All the people who are involved in the Atlanta cheating scandal will oppose it. All the crooks.
Most of your Democratic leadership.
Yeah, and like the
funny.
the charter school amendment, I suspect it will pass.
I would think so, because there's a lot of people, including a large segment of our African American voters, that like this, according to the polling.
Well, the main concern is that it creates yet another layer of bureaucracy, another staffing up that has to go about to run the program.
It's a refuge for students in failing schools.
It's another program, it's another effort to try to do something to educate children, which I do applaud, but at the same time, there could be a better use of the funds.
Let me real quickly get out of this segment by saying something that we don't have to really discuss much, but up in Habersham County, a settlement has been reached in the case of poor baby Boo Boo, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the baby's full name. He's in the press as Baby Boo Boo, and his family will get $1 million, and that can't make up for the damage to his face from the grenade thrown by the sheriff's deputies, but nonetheless, that has come to some resolution. All right, when we come back, lots of things, but we'll focus on politics. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
We're going to try to jump quickly now to several topics. I'll begin with a political loose end, if you will, now fixed. Michelle Nunn, the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate in Georgia, is going to head CARE, the great international organization that's headquartered here in Atlanta. She'll make a lot of money, good for her. But in this case, as opposed to her run for the U.S. Senate, she's actually qualified.
She's well qualified, and she would have been
think
well qualified to be serving
fit.
the U.S. Senate too. But I'm really excited about her.
And our former U.S. Attorney, Sally Yates, was approved by a Senate committee this week, Senate Judiciary Committee, by an 18-2 vote to be the Deputy U.S. Attorney General. And then, in a bit of a surprise, her new boss will be Loretta Lynch, the U.S. Attorney in Brooklyn, who was confirmed by the U.S. Senate this week.
Yeah. Terrific news for Sally Yates. You don't normally see folks rise through the ranks like that, in the prosecutorial ranks. Those are usually political appointments of some sort or another.
Yeah.
And it's
she
good
was
to
an excellent prosecutor.
Yeah, she was.
She got bipartisan support. Our own senators, Johnny Isakson and David Perdue, supported her.
Absolutely.
Which shows you something.
And her prosecutions were bipartisan as well.
They were. I think she could be some great supervision over Loretta Lynch, who's far more left-wing.
Supervision?
Yes.
She's going to be her deputy.
I know it. But she can be there at the table.
You mean reins? You mean hold the reins?
She can be there at the table, that's a good word, and say, wait a minute, we may not want to do this.
All right. Valdosta State, troubling incident this past week. Now, that's really almost in Florida, but it's a state university, and a group apparently from off campus came onto the campus and began stomping the American flag. And Phil, an Air Force veteran, a woman, ran him off the flag and said, "You're not going to do this."
That's right. I'm proud of that Air Force veteran, Michelle Manhunt. And what bothers me the most, and the president of the university, William McKinney, has just handled this terribly. The police, you're right, didn't know who these people were. I think it's worrisome that you've got people on campus, you don't know who they are. And all of a sudden, we saw the next day or so that one of the anti-flag people had a gun in a backpack, and now now he's on the loose and he's armed and dangerous. So
they locked down the school. They shut down the school.
They did
to look for this guy.
So you don't let in unknowns on the campus. And I tell you what, you know, unfortunately, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that you can desecrate and burn the American flag. I get that, but these are the scum of the earth that did that to the American flag.
All right, now let's turn our attention to the FBI here locally. I was very surprised to see the deputy special agent in charge give television interviews that they're looking for ISIS sympathizers, or perhaps ISIS operators, right here in Atlanta. You don't hear the FBI do that very much. In fact, she said that it's virtually every big city in the country.
Right.
Well, you know, I've talked to some FBI agents over the years, and I think we've talked about it too. This is a serious threat. And as you point out, Dick, it's very rare when they go public in a press conference. There's some dangerous people coming in and out of Atlanta, and I just hope Homeland Security and the FBI are on the job.
Well, and I also think they want to publicize the message about ISIS and American sympathizers
right.
to ISIS. And that's where they really are needing that people to be aware that people might be, you know, your next door neighbor planning to go
Look at the student at Georgia Tech who was making a bomb in his dorm room, a Muslim student.
Well, yeah, not only that, but all the people who are passing through Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. I mean, that's got to be a problem with the FBI on a daily basis.
All right, I'm going to make a bold prediction. We're just about out of time, but I want to do this. I don't do this very often. I believe that on Thursday, April 22nd, when the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Reuters all weighed in on the finances of Bill and Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton's presidential bid ended Thursday, April 22nd. There is too much there of campaign influence, special favors, special seekers, donations from primitive nations.
Has to redo its tech. A lot of Democrats are getting very upset, and they're speaking out. It's not Republicans.
This one will not go away. They can't duck this one.
Well, I don't know if that it won't go away, but this is such a unique circumstance. You've never had a person running for president who was a former First Lady, a former Secretary of State, and a former U.S. Senator, and married to a former President of the United States. So it's going to be all kinds of new and revealing things for people to consider. But I don't know that, I think they're both smart enough to know that whatever they've done, they don't do anything illegal.
But you know, and Jeff, if you and I were consulting them, wouldn't we tell Hillary Clinton, you better get out in front of this and start explaining yourself?
No, well, they're delay and deny.
I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to delay and deny, and they're going to talk about, you know, the prospect of having a first female president.
But they can't say this is the vast right-wing conspiracy this time. Because this vast right-wing conspiracy is the New York Times and the Washington Post. I agree. We got to get out. Last thought. Here's the key fact. The Clinton Foundation, when you look at the books, as the New York Times revealed in 4,000 words this week, the pass-through rate, in other words, the amount of money they raise and then contribute to charity, is 15%. All the rest is salaries.
And that's pretty bad. That could threaten their tax-exempt status.
Well, it sure should. All right, when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we will begin our closing segment with Phil Kent, who's using notepaper with little cartoon characters on it. What is that?
Well, let me tell you what's on my little
little bears and squirrels and bunny rabbits.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you what. I think I borrowed it from you. But, let me tell you what my winners are, and it's something that kind of got lost at the end of the legislative session, and that is some study commissions that are always important because they lead to a lot of good legislation. And one of them I wanted to point out to the viewers, and some of you may saw this, is the Higher Hope Scholarship cost to private school students to try to get them in line with the public universities. I hope that goes somewhere next year with legislation. And I got to go back to that Valdosta State incident. It's just, as a veteran, it's very upsetting to see a flag just trampled and desecrated, and especially when a president of a college and the police have no idea who these people are. They just come and go. So those are my big losers.
Alexis.
Okay, I'm again going to congratulate Michelle Nunn on her appointment to the CARE position, CEO. Eva Galambos, we've already discussed. And also this week we lost Annie Pearl Price, who ran the her hamburger place.
Oh yeah,
And it was ruled
Ghetto
named
burger.
the
Ghetto burger.
and it was named by the Wall Street Journal as the best hamburger in America in 2007. So she'll be missed. And I actually had a chance to go there with Jerry Coley one day. And then Chef Marvin, congratulations to him. He's been a TV chef, and now he has a restaurant in downtown Atlanta called Asante near Centennial Park. And I had a chance to go there and had dinner, and it was wonderful.
You're starting to sound like Tom Houck.
All right, sorry.
Jeff, go ahead.
All friends today and all winners. Jan Bryson and Daphne Jackson of GovLink are hosting the first ever Women in Construction Engineering and Related Services Conference in town. They're going to have Carol Tomei from Home Depot and former Senator Mary Landrieu and others in attendance there. Hats off to them. My friend Steve Smith is joining the Pendleton group, and I'm sorry I missed your reception, Steve. But he's going to be there with our good buddy Craig Lesser, as I said, friends all. And finally, Time Out, who appeared on this program many years ago and for many years, is a huge winner. I went on his tour, his civil rights tour last weekend. It is recommended. It ought to be required for some people to go on this tour. You will learn so much that you didn't know about the city of Atlanta.
We got to get out. My winner, Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, who refused to meet with former President Jimmy Carter, the Netanyahu showing exquisite taste and judgment in that matter. And for all of us here, there's no great way to say this, but just our hearts go out to the families of the 5 Georgia Southern University nursing students killed this week in that gruesome car wreck. We'll see you next week on The Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.